Essay 65, Part 6. The proof of connection antisymmetry is simple. It is a consequence of the antisymmetry of the commutator. Subsequently, I have given many fortifying proofs of the first ones in UFT 99 and 122 on AIAS.us. Earlier, I had given the correct version of the old second Bianchi identity in UFT 88, which has been read hundreds of thousands of times without objection. The Einstein field equation was based directly on the old 19.2 torsionless second Bianchi identity. It gradually became very clear to me that EGR is not only wrong but wildly wrong, so I began to look for other manifestations of this ghastly fate of 20th century cosmology. Naturally, I did not make myself popular, except with Queen Elizabeth, but so what, as Mr. So What would have fired out. I gradually hit upon the idea of using the conic sections, but modified with a precession factor that I named X, for the sake of blandness and old times at school, when X saturated all algebra. The innocent factor X was to have spectacular consequences that finished off EGR there and then and now. It works simply by multiplying the angle in the polar representation of the conic sections. This might be thought to be terminally boring, but as so often in real discovery, it contains profundities of hidden truth, hidden for almost 2,500 years since the Greeks discovered the conic sections, the circle, ellipse, parabola, and hyperbola. The terrible failure of EGR became apparent simply by differentiating the conic section with X for an ellipse. This was first done in UFT 202. At that point, I called this type of ellipse the precessing ellipse, because X very close to X minus 1, very close to 0, or X very close to unity, makes the ellipse turn on its focal point, or precess as the Latin has it. The equivalent result from EGR is indeed wildly wrong, and there is no denying it. A number of previous essays and broadcasts in this series have dealt with this result in hopefully understandable terms, and judging by their great popularity in English and Spanish on AIAS.us, they have succeeded very well. Robert Cheshire narrates them to a high professional standard, as does Alex Hill in Spanish translation. I also noticed in about 2011 to 12 that the precessing ellipse gives a different force law both to that of Newton and of Einstein. This turned out to be the truly universal law of gravitation, and can be obtained with the wonderful elegance of Lagrangian dynamics. Lagrange 1788. EGR gives the wrong force law for a precessing ellipse, and this terrible blunder confirms the foreboding by Karl Schwarzschild in his letter already mentioned in this essay, dated December the 22nd, 1915. No wonder Einstein never returned to the subject. For nearly a century, cosmologists have labored mightily to prove incorrect mathematics. My co-author Horst Eckert used the computer to finish off EGR by showing that the incorrect EGR force law produces a wild mess of an orbit, not at all a precessing ellipse. Within a few months, I derived many other ways of refuting EGR, but at the same time started to redevelop metric-based general relativity from the beginning. The discovery made in 211 or 212 was made in a ridiculously simple way by allowing X to vary over its full range for every type of conic section, whereupon appear a vast array of new conic sections of many types, all of them having fractal properties. This discovery was totally unexpected and occurred when X was varied over a small range to show the effect on a hyperbolic orbit. The intent being to demonstrate non-Newtonian light bending without use of EGR. Out of curiosity, I asked Horst Eckert to vary X over its complete range, and the hyperbola took on a life of its own, as explained in UFT 215. Very quickly, Horst Eckert and Ray Delaforce produced the wonderful fractal conic sections displayed on the blog of AIS.us. For several hundred years, the conic sections have been synonymous with orbits, so we can expect many new orbits to be discovered. All are produced by the new universal gravitational potential. This has the same format exactly as the potential of the Schrödinger equation in atoms and molecules, so as Gareth Evans pointed out, is universal on all scales. The EGR is wholly unable to produce this new subject in mathematics and physics. This kind of discovery has an immediacy that makes it clear to everyone, whatever their prior ideas. The most vivid analogy is the discovery of a hoard of shining and brilliantly crafted gold in archaeology, one that lay buried for over 2,500 years. I can do no better than to let the new patterns impart their life and beauty to the beholder's vision. We have posted the first patterns to emerge on the blog of AIS.us. To be historically accurate, a sixth former called David Herbert at Cantonian School in Cardiff wrote me a letter in around 211 to 12 sketching out some of the petal orbits. He was puzzled that they did not look like precessing ellipses, so he too must be given his fair share of credit. He had accidentally used a value of X that was too large for a precessing ellipse, for which X must be very close to unity. So thanks to the teachers and head teacher at Cantonian School for their help and enlightenment. Crickham Park, April 28th, 2012.